Members' statements has concluded, and we move to questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? I call the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Given that the Prime Minister has failed to express his confidence in his Minister for Defence, will the Prime Minister now demand the Minister's resignation, or will he sack him?
I call the Honourable the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister will resume his seat. I have to say to the House that yesterday's behaviour was absolutely appalling, and we will not be tolerated again today, and we will begin by the member for Wakefield leaving immediately. There will be silence on my right as well, and I'll have no hesitation in asking government members to leave if their behaviour is of equal disorder. Now, the Prime Minister has the call.
Madam Speaker, the Minister for Defence is doing an outstanding job, an absolutely outstanding job, following 6 years of neglect by members opposite. Let's never forget.
I can see the member for Morton is anxious to join the member for Wakefield.
That members opposite cut $16 billion out of defence as a result of the cuts and the neglect of members opposite. Defence spending as a percentage of GDP fell to the lowest level since 1938. So, Madam Speaker, I trust this Minister for Defence to deliver us a competent, professional and effective armed force. And, Madam Speaker, the extraordinary professionalism and conduct of our armed forces over the last year or so is a tribute to them, but it's also a credit to the Minister for Defence. Now, Madam Speaker, it's true that the Minister for Defence engaged in a bit of, I think we could say it was a rhetorical flourish, an uncalled for rhetorical flourish in the Senate yesterday. He said something in the Senate which he shouldn't have said, which he didn't mean, which he's withdrawn and which he's apologised for. Yes, there were problems with the Australian Submarine Corporation. There were problems with the Australian Submarine Corporation, problems that members opposite didn't fix, problems that developed under the Labor Party and which the Labor Party was incapable of fixing. Now, Madam Speaker, so often, this government is dealing with problems that it did not create, and as always, we have to take responsibility for fixing it. We've taken responsibility for fixing the air warfare destroyer project. It's now in reasonable shape, thanks in large measure to the good work of the Minister for Defence. He has my full confidence.
I call the honourable member for Deakin.
Thanks very much, Madam Speaker. My question's to the Prime Minister. And will the Prime Minister inform the House how the East-West Link project will create jobs and ease traffic congestion for commuters in Melbourne? What threats exist to this important project?
The Prime Minister will resume his seat. The member is still asking his question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The final part to that question was what threats exist to the project?
I now call the Honourable the Prime Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, I do thank the member for Deakin for his question, and I thank him for wanting to see Melbourne a modern city with first world 21st century infrastructure.
The member for Rankin will remove himself under 94A.
I say to everyone stuck in traffic in Hoddle Street, on Flemington Road, on Alexandra Parade, I say to all those people stuck in traffic, there is only one way to fix it. That's to build the East-West Link, and there's only one way to build the East-West Link, and that's to re-elect the Napthine government. Now, Madam Speaker, Melbourne is choking on its own traffic. The coalition will fix the gridlock, but Labor will keep it because it puts green preferences ahead of better infrastructure and more jobs. That's the truth. They put green preferences ahead of better infrastructure and more jobs. Now, Madam Speaker, the East-West Link, it will cut out 23 sets of traffic lights. It will give inner-city residents their parks and their suburbs back. It will give 100,000 vehicles and their occupants a 20-minute time saving every single day. And East-West Link Stage 1 will create almost 4,000 jobs, and combined with Stage 2, East-West Link will create 7,000 jobs. It is exactly the economic shot in the arm that Victoria needs. Dennis Napthine supports it. The Labor Party opposes it. There could not be a clearer choice facing the people of Victoria this Saturday. Not only, Madam Speaker, does Labor oppose the East-West Link, not only does Labor want to keep Melbourne in the 19th century, but, Madam Speaker, the Victorian Labor Party wants to rip up the contract. They want to rip up the contract. Not only do they want to make it less convenient for people driving cars and trucks, they want to ensure that Victoria is no longer a safe place to invest by ripping up this contract. Now, Madam Speaker, this is a serious problem, and it's a serious problem not just for Victorian Labor, it's a problem for federal Labor too. Let me quote someone who I don't normally quote, but I'm going to do it now, the Shadow Treasurer. Bill Shorten and I are of one mind. Labor honours contracts. Even if we don't like them, for issues of sovereign risk, Labor honours contracts signed by previous governments. So this is my challenge to the Leader of the Opposition. Show a bit of spine, and say East-West must go ahead. Melbourne must have the infrastructure of the 21st century, and only the Napthine government will build it.
I call the honourable member for Batman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Yesterday in the Senate, the Minister for Defence attacked the highly skilled submarine workforce at ASC, stating he wouldn't trust them to build a canoe. Given the Minister has failed to apologise for this insulting slur, will the Prime Minister now sack the Minister?
I call the honourable the Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, as I said earlier in response to a question from the Leader of the Opposition, the Minister engaged in a rhetorical flourish. He said the wrong thing in the heat of debate in the Senate. He's admitted that he said the wrong thing. He's withdrawn it. He's apologised. He's affirmed that the Australian Submarine Corporation is an important part of our defence material institutional structure. It services our submarine fleet. It's helping to build our air warfare destroyers. Obviously, we want it to be in the best possible shape, and that's exactly what's happening thanks to this government and this minister. Now, Madam Speaker, can I say that the Australian Defence Forces are in good shape, and they are doing great work right around the world. They really are. They are doing great work right around the world. Right now, they are performing magnificently. They are fighting the world's fight. They are fighting freedom's fight in Iraq and elsewhere. They deserve support, and that's exactly what they've got from this Minister for Defence, who has my full confidence and should have the confidence of this House. This minister does not deserve to be undermined by members opposite. He does not deserve to be undermined for members opposite just because of a slip of the tongue in the Senate yesterday.
I call the honourable member, the Manager of Opposition Business, on the point of order.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. In the Prime Minister's answer, he referred to an apology. I'd ask him to table the apology because there was no apology in his statement. No apology.
The member for Watson knows very well that is not a proper use of the point of order. If he wishes to debate something, he can do it later in another time. I call the honourable member for Corangamite.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Will the Treasurer advise the House of the benefits to growth and jobs in Melbourne and to wider Victoria, including my electorate of Corangamite, of the East-West Link project? What risks are there to this vital infrastructure project?
I call the honourable the Treasurer.
Well, I thank the member for Corangamite, and I will advise the House of the benefits of the East-West Link project. It represents 7,000 jobs in and around Melbourne. 7,000 new jobs. And that's a remarkable figure, because under the coalition this year, there have been 7,000 jobs a month more created in the Australian economy than there were in the last year of Labor, when the Leader of the Opposition was the Minister for Employment. So under the coalition this year, as a result of our economic action strategy, we are delivering through the economy an extra 7,000 jobs a month. And in one great example, by entering into an agreement with the Premier of Victoria, we are committing $3 billion to another 7,000 new jobs in Victoria in the construction of the East-West Link. And the only way those 7,000 jobs are going to be delivered is if you vote Liberal on Saturday.
The member for Granger on a point of order.
Yes, Madam Speaker. In order to be relevant, he has to indicate that the $3 billion came from the cut to the Melbourne Metro.
There is no point of order. Resume your seat. The Treasurer has the call.
It's not true. And yet again, that is a complete fabrication and completely untrue. But of course, the member for Granger is in that place. He's just trying to hold on to yesterday. We're focused on tomorrow. Tomorrow is about building East-West Link, creating 7,000 jobs.
Member for Granger.
Now, of course, we know that the Labor Party in Victoria wants to tear up that contract, completely at odds with the statement by the member for McMahon that Labor honours contracts. They actually want to tear it up. And the $3 billion that the Commonwealth Government has committed will then come back to Canberra, and Victorians will lose out not only on the $3 billion from Canberra for new roads, they'll end up paying more than $1 billion in compensation to a building and construction company for a road that was never built. But even worse, if Labor is elected on Saturday in Victoria, 250 construction workers who are working on East-West Link today will immediately lose their job. And then why? Because Labor is tearing up the contract, a contract to build a more productive economy, a contract that is going to get rid of nearly 2 hours of travel time across Melbourne, a contract that is helping to deliver prosperity and opportunity to the people of Victoria. And this is a classic, simple example. We are the people that help to create jobs in the economy. It is the coalition that helps to deliver jobs. It is the Labor Party that always costs jobs. It's the Labor Party that costs productivity, and it's the Labor Party that hurts the economy.
I call the honourable member for Port Adelaide.
There we go. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. On the 8th of May last year, the now Minister for Defence promised the Coalition today is committed to building 12 new submarines here in Adelaide. Given that he's broken this $20 billion promise and we have a Defence Minister that no one else will defend, will the Prime Minister now sack the Minister for Defence?
The Prime Minister has the call.
Well, Madam Speaker, the commitment that I made before the election was that the Australian work on the future submarines would centre on the South Australian shipyards. That was the commitment that I made. And, Madam Speaker, that's a commitment that the government will keep.
If more members on the opposition benches wish to leave, they'll keep up the noise.
What we want is the best possible submarine fleet. We want the best possible submarine fleet at a fair price. That's what we want. We want the most effective submarines at the best possible price, and that's exactly what this government will get. We will get the best possible submarines at the best possible price. And, Madam Speaker,
the member for Lalor.
The Leader of the Opposition says that we can have submarines as long as they've got nothing to do with Japan because of what happened in World War II. Well, really and truly, what an extraordinary piece of xenophobia from the Leader of the Opposition. You know what the Leader of the Opposition's remarks demonstrate? You can't trust the nation's defences in his hands. If that's his attitude, to the future submarine fleet of our country.
Madam Speaker.
I call the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister has totally fabricated those remarks. He's attributed to me.
The Leader of the Opposition knows that he may not enter into debate at question time and is totally out of order. Totally out of order. And if it happens again, he will be asked to leave. Now the call goes to the Prime Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker,
have you completed your answer?
No, I'm continuing my answer. The Leader of the Opposition, went to the ASC and he said that the last thing Australia should ever have is a Japanese submarine. That's what he said, because remember World War II. He said. It's exactly what he said.
That's what you said.
Exactly what he said. He was kind of like a reverse John Cleese. That's what he was. A reverse John Cleese. Remember the war. That was what he says, show us your transcript. You know, that's the transcript he wouldn't put out, Madam Speaker. Such a big man, the former union official goes to the shipyards, you know, puts his union leader's cap back on again, takes off his alternative Prime Minister's cap, puts on his union leader's cap, and he plays the xenophobe card. That's what he does. Puts at risk our nation's defences because he plays the xenophobe card. Well, shame. Shame on this Leader of the Opposition. And Madam Speaker, if he wants to prove his own, he says, shame on your dishonesty. Oh, that's great. Well, be an honest Leader of the Opposition for once and show us your transcript. Put out the transcript that you tried to hide. That's what you should do.
I call the honourable member for Melbourne.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. With less than 72 hours until people start voting in Saturday's Victorian election, will the Prime Minister please spend as much time in Melbourne as possible? Will the Prime Minister explain his Liberal government's vision for a society where wind turbines don't get built, money is cut from public education and public transport gets nothing at all?
I call the Honourable the Prime Minister, and there'll be silence on my right.
Well, Madam Speaker, I'm very happy to answer that question, Madam Speaker, and I'm very happy to give the member my vision for Victoria and for Melbourne. My vision for Melbourne is a Melbourne with East-West Link built. That's my vision for Melbourne. My vision for Victoria is a state that's run by the Premier, not by the Leader of the CFMEU. That's my vision for Melbourne. My vision for Victoria is a state with a government that is responsible to the people, not alternately to the Greens and to John Setka, the Leader of the CFMEU. Because, Madam Speaker, if there is a change of government in Victoria on the weekend, and I don't believe there will be, but if there is a change of government in Victoria on the weekend, East-West Link won't be built. The people of Victoria will be down three. We have one of the Victorian members saying, "Hear, hear." He doesn't want the East-West Link being. He's on a unity ticket with Daniel Andrews, the member for Wills, straight out of his mouth. Hear, hear. He says he doesn't want the East-West Link built. That's the problem. What does the Leader of the Opposition think? We might, perhaps just for once, we might get a bit of spine from the Leader of the Opposition, and he might tell us what he thinks. But, Madam Speaker, if there is a change of government in Victoria, East-West Link will not be built. The people of Melbourne will continue to be in traffic gridlock, and the most powerful person in the state will be John Setka, the Leader of the CFMEU. This is not a vision. This is a nightmare.
I call the honourable member for Latrobe.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Education representing the Minister for Employment. Will the Minister inform the House of the government's efforts to ensure the rule of law in our workplaces, particularly in the construction industry? What challenges are there to this vital reform?
I call the Honourable the Minister for Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm pleased to tell the member for Latrobe that under the Howard government there was a respect for the rule of law in the federal government, and in fact the Australian Building and Construction Commission, covering building and construction, saved the Australian economy $7.5 billion, and the building and construction productivity increased by 16.8% after the creation of the Australian Building and Construction Commission by the now Prime Minister in the Howard government. On the other hand, Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition reversed the Australian Building and Construction Commission on the instructions of his union handlers at the CFMEU. The rogue CFMEU was brought back to the Cabinet table. The ABCC was abolished. The CFMEU had its seat telling Labor how to run industrial relations. We're trying to fix that. We are trying to bring back the Australian Building and Construction Commission. We're trying to establish the Registered Organisations Commission. And who is opposing those reforms? Well, no other than the Leader of the Opposition Union Bill, trying to oppose those reforms to stop the tough cop on the industrial beat. And I withdraw, Madam Speaker. I withdraw, Madam Speaker. I'm happy to withdraw. Trying to stop the
day the word
on the
union
industrial
becomes,
beat.
if I might say, if the Minister will resume his seat, the day that the word union is considered unparliamentary, I think would be remarkable. It is not unparliamentary.
Madam Speaker, I'd like my clock to stop.
Yes. Well, this clock will stop. The member for Isaacs.
Very well that was not the point of order I was proposing to take.
Oh,
I have
well,
not given you the point of order. The point of order was that the member should use members' proper titles in this chamber, not the point that you made.
The member will resume his seat. The Minister has the call and will refer to people by their correct titles.
I will, Madam Speaker. Only yesterday, Nigel Hadgkiss, the Fair Work Building and Construction Director, said he'd identified more than 500 projects in receipt of $50 billion in federal funding that are at risk of running over budget and time unless legal abuses in the industry ended. It pains me to say that unlawful conduct in Australia's construction industry is still in a deplorable state of affairs. In this environment, Madam Speaker, in this environment, Daniel Andrews, the Leader of the Opposition in Victoria, wants to rip up Victoria's building code. In spite of all the warnings from former Royal Commissioners, from the Fair Work Building and Construction Commission, he wants to rip up Victoria's building code and put John Setka back in charge of running Victoria, the head of the CFMEU. He went so far as to stand next to representatives of the CFMEU in 2012 when he announced that he would rip up Victoria's building code. So he wants to bring the CFMEU back into the centre of government in Victoria, jam up the building and construction industry in Victoria, which is a vital jobs growth sector in Victoria. If you vote Labor on Saturday, you'll be voting for John Setka to run Victoria again, or you can vote for the stable Napthine-Ryan government.
I call the honourable member for Macon.
My question is also to the Prime Minister. Last week, the CEO of ASC confirmed to the Senate that Australia's future submarines can be built in Adelaide at a competitive price. Given the Minister for Defence refused to have a competitive tender process for this project, will the Prime Minister now sack the Minister for Defence?
The Prime Minister has the honourable Prime Minister has the call.
Madam Speaker, I do thank the member for his question, but I think he should go back and have another look at the facts, because, Madam Speaker, the government is still considering this issue. The government is still considering this issue, and this suggestion that things have been ruled out is simply false. It's simply false.
I call the honourable member for Macmillan.
Thank you for the call, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Justice. Will the Minister inform the House how the Joint Police Task Force into Industrial Criminality and Corruption will tackle the threat to the community and economy of corrupt practices in the union movement?
I call the honourable Minister for Justice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and can I thank the member for Macmillan for that question. On the 30th of October, the Prime Minister joined with Premier Napthine in announcing a joint police task force into illegal activity within Victoria's unions. The joint AFP Victoria Police Task Force will consist of investigative officers, surveillance units and intelligence units. It will investigate some of the very concerning allegations that have been raised about the CFMEU. And if we look at the evidence provided by counsel assisting the Royal Commission into union corruption, allegations against the CFMEU include blackmail and extortion perpetrated by officers of the CFMEU in Victoria and Queensland, the making of a death threat by one CFMEU organiser to another, and the failure of anyone within that union to commence a proper investigation into that incident, defiance of court orders and intimidation of individuals and businesses. We also know that the CFMEU likes to rub shoulders with criminals, members of the Comancheros bikie gang, underworld heavy George Alex. The Victorian State Secretary of the CFMEU, John Setka, has been convicted or fined in relation to 40 separate charges. Offences include willful trespass, assault and assault on police. Setka has been described by underworld figure Mick Gatto as a close mate, and Setka has another mate in Victorian opposition leader Daniel Andrews, because despite all of the evidence, the Victorian Labor Party is determined to maintain a close relationship with this union by continuing to receive substantial political donations and even allowing John Setka, a close mate of Mick Gatto's, to address a conference at the Victorian Labor Party. Voters in Victoria need to be aware that a vote for Labor on Saturday is literally a vote for the CFMEU to have a seat at the Cabinet table.
The member for Melbourne Ports.
At that Cabinet table will be another CFMEU member who is the current Shadow Planning, Major Projects and Infrastructure Minister, Brian T. So the Victorian economy, particularly in the areas of construction and major projects, is not going to be particularly well served by a minister who is subservient to a union that is rife with corruption and criminality. Now, Madam Speaker, there's a very old saying, one that will be very well known to members in this place: always dance with the one who brung you. And in the case of Victorian opposition leader Daniel Andrews, if he were to win the election on Saturday, installed by the CFMEU, financed by the CFMEU, the one who brung him will be the most notoriously corrupt union in the country.
I call the honourable member for Canberra.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Given the Minister for Defence's disgraceful cut to the real wages and conditions of our defence men and women, will the Prime Minister now sack the Minister for Defence?
The Honourable Prime Minister has the call.
Madam Speaker, the government is proposing a 1.5% increase for members of our defence forces. So the premise of the member's question is simply false. Simply false. Simply false. So, Madam Speaker, if members opposite want to have a proper debate in this House, they should deal with facts, not fiction. And I've concluded my answer.
I call the honourable member for Higgins.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My question is to the hard-working Minister for the Environment. Will the minister outline the final impact of the carbon tax on Victorian families and businesses, including the savings that have been passed on since the government scrapped this tax? Are there any threats to these savings?
I call the honourable Minister for the Environment.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the very hard-working member for Higgins. And the hard-working member for Higgins did something that her neighbour, the member for Melbourne Ports, didn't do. She voted to repeal the carbon tax. He voted to keep the carbon tax. And she asked what was the impact of that carbon tax on the latest figures on Victorians. Well, we now know from the Clean Energy Regulator in the latest figures that over a 2-year period, Victorians paid $3 billion in carbon tax. Victorians paid over $3 billion in carbon tax. The largest part of that carbon tax over those 2 years was $2.7 billion in electricity payments. And as a consequence of the repeal, for which the member for Higgins voted, for which the member for Latrobe voted, the member for Corangamite voted, all of the members on this side voted, those prices have been reduced. We see a 12.4% reduction for Power Direct customers, for small business customers with Lumo Energy, a 10.7% reduction compared with what it would otherwise have been. For Simply Energy, a 10% reduction. So that's what we see in Victoria. But if the Labor Party were back in power and if the State Labor Party had their way as well, we'd see for Lumo Energy customers, again, we'd have a 10.7% increase in their electricity bills. So they're the real things that are actually occurring. And we might ask ourselves, what other firms paid the price in Victoria? Murray Goulburn Cooperative, $2.6 million for dairy production, for milk. Fonterra, $2.4 million for dairy production, a tax on milk. This is the tax that these people want to bring back. So if the Leader of the Opposition were to be elected as Prime Minister, he would be bringing back a tax on Murray Goulburn, on Fonterra, on Tatura milk, and by the way, throw in La Trobe University, which paid almost $500,000 in terms of their additional costs in the last year alone. And so then that brings me to the impact of the carbon tax on Victoria's hospitals and on its public transport. The latest figures we have is that over a 2-year period there was $26.7 million from the carbon tax that they love on our public hospitals and our public transport in Victoria. So they bleat about the impact of costs. Well, they want to increase costs on public transport, they want to increase costs on public hospitals, and they want to increase costs on milk. At the end of the day, we voted to repeal the carbon tax. They want to bring it back. We're for lower costs.
I call the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question's to the Prime Minister. I refer to reports today that the Prime Minister is scraping off barnacles. Which barnacle will the Prime Minister scrape off today? Is disaster of a Defence Minister or is disaster of a GP tax?
I call the Honourable the Prime Minister.
I reckon what we need to lose is Barnacle Bill. Let's get rid of Barnacle Bill. Barnacle Bill. Madam Speaker, what this government is doing is calmly and methodically addressing the problems that our nation faces. And, Madam Speaker, we are successfully addressing the problems that our nation faces. Economic security and national security both being addressed by this government. Both being addressed by this government. The boats have stopped, Madam Speaker, and the budget is coming back under control. No thanks to Barnacle Bill sitting opposite, Madam Speaker. Having created the problem, I mean, this is the truth, Madam Speaker. The truth is, Madam Speaker, Labor gave us a debt and deficit disaster, a fiscal deterioration unprecedented in our history. They gave us a massive fiscal problem, and having created the problem, they are now trying to sabotage the solution. That's the truth. They are trying to sabotage the solution. They are the greatest fiscal vandals in Australia's history. That's what they are. They are fiscal saboteurs. They are a menace to our country's future. That's exactly what Labor has demonstrated itself over the last 14 months. Madam Speaker, they were incompetent in government. They are wreckers in opposition. The barnacle that most needs to be gotten rid of is Barnacle Bill sitting opposite.
Before I call the honourable member for Tangney, I wish to advise the House that we have with us in the Distinguished Visitors Gallery the Honourable Tim Fischer, AC, GCPO, former Deputy Prime Minister in the Howard Government, former Minister for Trade and former Leader of the National Party, and dare I say, now author of Maestro John Monash, Australia's greatest citizen general. It's a pleasure to have you with us. We all member for Grangler. Well, you might have to go right outside and support him any minute. We also have in the gallery participants in the 2015 Gallipoli Mateship Trek, led by the members for Cook and Blaxland, who will be in Gallipoli on Australia Day next year to support the centenary of Anzac commemorations. We also make you most welcome. I then call the member for Tangney.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs. Will the minister update the House on the achievements of the new Colombo Plan after just 1 year? What benefits will continue to flow to Australia and the region because of this program?
I call the Honourable the Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Tangney for his question, and I welcome the opportunity to update the House on a signature policy of the Abbott government that we took to the last election, and after 12 months we have already seen the benefits of the new Colombo Plan. For this is an investment in our country's future by investing in our young people, in our potential leaders of the future, by investing in our engagement in the region. During the pilot phase of this program in 2014, 1,300 young Australian undergraduates from universities across the country have had the opportunity to study and live and work in locations in our region, in Japan, in Hong Kong, in Singapore and Indonesia. And just this week, the Minister for Education and I have announced that in 2015, 3,150 young Australians will be given the opportunity to study in universities across our region. In fact, 37 Australian universities have produced recipients of new Colombo Plan grants and scholarships to study in 32 countries in our region, from India in the west, Mongolia in the north, to the Cook Islands in the east, and 29 countries in between. Young Australians between the ages of 18 and 28 will have a transformational experience. The member for Tangney will be interested that Murdoch University in his own electorate have produced 42 recipients of mobility grants, short courses or up to semester-long courses, and they'll be undertaking work and study in India, Japan, Singapore, Thailand. A number of Victorian members will be interested to know that over 700 young Victorians are being given a chance in 2015 by the Abbott government to study in universities in our region. In particular, Deakin University, 90 students who will be studying in China, India, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, Vanuatu. We have 91 students from La Trobe studying in China, India, Malaysia, Samoa, Singapore, Taiwan. In Monash, 98 students, RMIT 57 students, Swinburne 66 students, University of Melbourne 138 students. And members might be interested to know that the top destination for our applicants for mobility grants and semester-long courses was Indonesia with 600 students, China second with 550 students, India third with 300 students. Next week I hope to announce the winners of the scholarships, 70 scholarships for up to 12 months. This is all about ensuring our young people have new perspectives, new skills, new insights, but add to the productivity and prosperity of this country and our engagement with the region. This government delivers.
I call the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. I refer to reports today that the Prime Minister is scraping off the barnacles. Which barnacle will the Prime Minister scrape off today? His disaster of $100,000 university degrees or his gold-plated paid parental leave scheme?
I call the Honourable the Prime Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, what this government has done is identified exactly what we would do to bring Australia back into a sustainable fiscal position, and that is what the Leader of the Opposition has signally failed to do. Now, Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition has no credibility whatsoever when it comes to the economy. Let me quote from the Leader of the Opposition when he was a minister in the former government. He said, the 2012 budget delivers on the government's commitment to return the budget to surplus.
The Prime Minister
the return
will
to surplus.
The Manager of Opposition on a point of order.
Under direct relevance, Madam Speaker, there is no way this is directly relevant to what he was asked. No way in the world.
There is no point of order. The member will resume his seat. The Prime Minister has the call.
Madam
Members
Speaker,
for Adelaide and Chifley will desist.
Madam Speaker, I am explaining to members opposite how this government is fixing the problem that they have created. Now, Madam Speaker, the difficulty is that members opposite are in denial about the problem, just as they're in denial about the surplus.
The Prime Minister will resume his seat. You've already had a point of order on direct relevance.
Point of order. If this is what the Prime Minister has just said what he wants to do in this answer, he should do it.
Resume your seat. Resume your seat. That is an abuse of the standing orders, and the member for Watson knows it. I wouldn't advise he does it again. The Prime Minister has the call.
Now, Madam Speaker, I can understand why members opposite are sensitive on this point. I can understand why they're sensitive on this point, because they know a surplus is important. They know a surplus is important because they constantly talked about delivering it, and they never actually did. Again, I quote from the Leader of the Opposition when he was a minister in the former government. He said, "We are bringing the budget into surplus," he declared in this House. It is a remarkable accomplishment. Let me repeat that, Madam Speaker. He said, "We are bringing the budget into surplus." It is a remarkable accomplishment. It was just an accomplishment that they never actually achieved, Madam Speaker. That's the problem, Madam Speaker. And they've suddenly gone remarkably quiet, Madam Speaker. They have suddenly gone remarkably quiet because, Madam Speaker,
the member for Lawler is not in her seat.
They know that you need a budget surplus for a strong economy. Not only did they not deliver it in their 6 years of government, not only did they give us 6 record budget deficits in a row, but now that a government has been elected that is determined to fix this problem that they created, they are
sabotaging. The member for Adelaide.
Vandals, the worst lot of wreckers and vandals in Australia's history. And, Madam Speaker, the worst lot of vandals and wreckers in Australian history. We were elected to fix the problems that Labor created, and fix them we will.
I call the honourable member for Mallee.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Trade and Investment. Will the Minister inform the House of the benefits for Australian services, investors and businesses as a result of the Australia-China Free Trade Agreement?
I call the Honourable Minister for Trade and Investment. The member for Chifley.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for Mallee for his question, and note that despite his shy and retiring nature, he is a tremendous advocate for agriculture and horticulture, served as president of the Victorian Farmers Federation between 2009 and 2012, the youngest ever, I understand. Madam Speaker, it's worthwhile looking at the electorate of Mallee as an example of the impact of the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement on a major regional centre in Australia. The Mallee itself represents one of the great horticultural regions in Australia. It grows 62% of Australia's almonds. Tariffs of up to 24% will go. The Mallee grows 75% of Australia's table grapes, which largely go to Guangzhou. 13% tariffs will go. The Mallee grows 90% of Australia's dried fruit. 10% tariffs will go. The Mallee is a huge source of avocados. 25% tariffs will go. The Mallee is a strong citrus region. Up to 30% tariffs will go. On juice production, tariffs on orange and carrot juice will go. The Mallee is a major wine-producing region and will benefit greatly from the removal of tariffs of up to 30% on Australian wine. It's a huge region for barley, 548 million export industry to China today, and the 3% tax will go. While the Mallee is not dairying and beef and sheep meat country, total tariff elimination on dairy and beef and sheep meat will result in a huge increase in domestic consumption of grains, which is one of the great strengths of the Mallee, for dairy cows, cattle, sheep and the like. On services, Ramsay Health, a great Australian company operates the Mildura Public Hospital. Ramsay Health is currently negotiating to be appointed the operator of 5 hospitals in the Chengdu city, serving a mix of public and private patients. In future, Ramsay can build whatever hospitals they like in China, own them and operate them 100%. The Mallee TAFE, known as Sunny TAFE, is recruiting students from China as a result of the free trade agreement. And of course the tourism sector is benefiting enormously because of the investment opportunity in hotels, in resorts and attractions, and the new working holiday visa, 5,000 young Chinese available for seasonal work in areas where it's difficult to get Australian workers. Madam Speaker, this FTA is not only transformational for Australia, it's transformational especially for the Mallee.
I call the honourable member for Blaxland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. In question time on Monday, the Prime Minister said we are applying an efficiency dividend to the ABC. But yesterday, when discussing the Prime Minister's cuts to the ABC, the Minister for Communications said this is not an efficiency dividend. Prime Minister, is the Minister for Communications right?
The Prime Minister has the call.
I said it was effectively an efficiency dividend because the amount was equivalent. Madam Speaker, the opposition leader is blithering. The opposition leader is blithering on the other side of the dispatch box.
The Leader of the Opposition has asked his questions previously. One of his colleagues has asked a question. He'll listen to the answer. Prime Minister has the call.
Madam Speaker, we are applying for some savings from the ABC. That's what we're doing. We are asking for savings from the ABC. The ABC should not be treated any differently from all the other government entities which are being asked to provide an efficiency dividend. Now, the saving that we are asking
the member for Adelaide.
The savings that we are seeking from the ABC are effectively an efficiency dividend. In fact, they're better than efficiency
Prime Minister will resume his
They
seat.
are better than efficiency dividend because we've told
The Prime Minister will resume his seat. The member for Granger is seeking a point of order, not the member for Isaacs. He doesn't need to speak for him. The member for Granger.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I'm concerned that the Prime Minister is misleading Parliament.
My
point of order is that the Prime Minister is misleading
there is
Parliament.
No point of order.
He said we are applying an.
The members resume his seat. A member will resume his seat. That is abuse of the standing orders, and he knows it better than most. Once more, and he will leave the chamber under 94A. The Prime Minister has the call.
Madam Speaker, it's better than an efficiency dividend because not only are we requiring savings of the ABC, we've actually demonstrated through the Lewis report just where savings can be achieved. So that's what we're doing. We're doing better than an efficiency dividend. Now, Madam Speaker, I tell you what,
the choice is hers.
This is yet another example, Madam Speaker, of this government being
the member for Adelaide will leave under 94A.
Upfront. We say that there needs to be savings from the ABC, and we're prepared to quantify what those savings should be. The Leader of the Opposition, he says yes, there should be cuts, but he won't tell us what they are. He won't tell us how deep they will be, and he said yesterday in Parliament, under his breath, that he'd tell us after the election. That's when the public would find out. So not only is he duplicitous in not being up front with the Australian people, but he's being arrogant, assuming that he's going to win the next election. Well, really and truly, what we've got from the Leader of the Opposition is more untrustworthiness, more sneakiness. We know that Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard couldn't trust the Leader of the Opposition. They're not the only leaders of the Labor Party who couldn't trust him. When I first became leader, Bill Ludwig and Little Billy Shorten pledged AWU support for me, but you can't trust them as far as you can kick them. Every Labor leader who knew this Leader of the Opposition knew he couldn't be trusted. And, Madam Speaker, if Labor leaders can't trust the Leader of the Opposition, neither can the Australian public.
The member for Sydney will withdraw the unparliamentary remark she made during the course of that answer.
Speaker, point of order. Point of order.
The Manager of Opposition Business on a point of order.
Yesterday, that exact phrase, bald-faced lie, was ruled in order when it was said by a member of the government.
The way I heard it
the exact phrase.
The way I heard it was not, as you put it, but it had an ER on the end, or AR on the end. Well, I'll leave it for the moment. I call the honourable member for Hume.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture. I remind the Minister that I recently attended the opening of a major new export abattoir, Hilltop Meats, in my electorate. Will the Minister outline to the House the benefits of the Australia-China Free Trade Agreement, particularly for those in our red meat industries like Hilltop Meats?
I call the honourable Minister for Agriculture.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Hume. And the member for Hume, not only is he a great member for his local electorate, he's a person who's from a family in the cattle and sheep game, so he knows a lot about this industry. He's a person who comes from an area where just recently he was at the opening of Hilltop Abattoir. That's about 380 employees they're going to put at that abattoir, so that's great. They're new jobs. That's what we do on this side of the chamber. That's what we do in government, get people into work. I also know that GE Scott, that abattoir, is also expanding it. That's more jobs. And of course, he's a very talented man, university medalist, the member for Hume, a Rhodes Scholar. It's good to have a few of those on our side. It's always good to have some talent, and that's how you get a good government. But it's good also to be able to go through some of the details of why this advantage, this expansion in beef, is going to get even better. A market for which, for fresh, chilled and frozen, we sold $787 million worth of beef there last year, but it's currently got a 12 to 25% tariff on it. But after the good work of the Minister for Trade, the excellent work of the Minister for Trade, that tariff in 9 years is going down to zero. And in sheep meat, for which we had $446 million worth of sales last year under a coalition government, that tariff, it's currently got a 12 to 23% tariff, and that tariff after 8 years is going down to zero. And for goat meat, that tariff is currently at 20%, and it's going down after 8 years to zero. For offal bovine, that's going from 12% down to zero. For offal for sheep and goat meat, that's also going down to zero. We're actually reducing these tariffs, and this is going to bring an explosion in further exports into one of our major markets. An explosion so much more that the Meat and Livestock Australia has said that out to 2030 that this is going to be worth $3.3 billion. $3.3 billion in the beef industry alone. It's going to be worth $1.8 billion in the sheep meat industry. The National Farmers Federation said this agreement is an outstanding achievement that will build on Australia's important trading future. But what does the Shadow Minister for Agriculture say? But there can be no doubt, this is the Shadow Minister for Agriculture, this is the alternate government. There can be no doubt that the benefits are overstated. Because they never concentrated on this, because whilst Chile and whilst New Zealand had a free trade agreement, whilst Uruguay and Brazil were catching up with us, what was the Labor Party worried about? Well, you can go through their bunch of tricks. They had the Citizens' Assembly of 150 people. Remember that, because they didn't believe in their own government. They had a population policy without a population target. And now they're piece de resistance. They couldn't organise a free trade agreement. They couldn't organise Peter Smith to be the Speaker of the House. That was another brilliant piece of work. And it's quite obvious that...
Minister's time has elapsed. I call the honourable member for Sydney.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Yesterday, when speaking about the Prime Minister's broken promise on the ABC, the Minister for Communications said, and I quote, "Certainly there are cuts." He said no cuts to the ABC or SBS. There are cuts to the ABC or SBS. Prime Minister, was the Minister for Communications right?
Madam Speaker,
the Honourable Prime Minister has the call.
Of course we are seeking savings from the ABC. And I ask members opposite, why do they think the ABC should be a protected species? Why? Oh, and now they say you said it. Well, members opposite said that the deficit would be $18 billion, and it turned out to be $50 billion. Circumstances changed, events moved on. Don't members opposite understand? Don't members opposite understand that they left our country with a fiscal disaster? Don't they understand that? Don't they understand that if they ruin...
The member for Sydney's asked a question and will desist.
Don't they understand that if they are guilty of intergenerational theft, it is important for this government to set things right? Don't they Madam Speaker, she's asked the question.
I've already pointed that out. The member for Sydney will desist and hear the answer to the question she's asked.
Madam Speaker, we have been quite upfront with the Australian people. We've said exactly what savings we are seeking. We've said exactly what savings we require them to make. The Leader of the Opposition says that there'll be cuts under Labor as well, but he won't tell us what they are until after he's won the election. Well, Madam Speaker, what could be more arrogant and duplicitous than that? But, Madam Speaker, sneakiness is stock in trade for this Leader of the Opposition.
On our left.
I quoted one section of Paul Kelly's book yesterday. Let me quote more of Paul Kelly. In March, Swan kept his eye on Shorten, suspicious about his loyalty to Gillard. Many Labor figures suspected that Shorten's real position in March was, I must support Gillard, but I want Rudd to win. Shorten didn't want the political blood of two leaders on his hands. He was thinking of his future, and that's the problem. He only thinks of his future, never of our country's future. That's his problem. That's why he will never be Prime Minister of this country.
I call the honourable member for Penrith, for Lindsay. The member for the Minister for Health will desist, and the member for Lindsay has the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. Will the Minister update the House on the benefits to Australia's aged care sector as a result of the recent Australia-China Free Trade Agreement?
I call the Honourable the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and can I thank the member for Lindsay for her question and commend her on the wonderful representation of the people of Lindsay, people in Penrith and along the Nepean River in Western New South Wales, Western Sydney. Madam Speaker, the Free Trade Agreement offers enormous opportunities for the aged care sector in Australia, and that's because the Free Trade Agreement will allow wholly Australian-owned and operated hospitals and aged care institutions to be established in China. Now, consider the size, the enormity of the potential market in China. Currently, there are about 194 million people aged 60 and over in China. And that number will actually grow significantly as the Chinese population ages. And indeed, the Chinese plan over the next 6 years to double the number of aged care beds in that country to 3.8 million. 3.8 million aged care beds. And indeed, they predict that the growth of the workforce in aged care in China will grow from a current workforce of about 1 million people to about 10 million people by 2020. So this is an enormous opportunity, as the member for Lindsay asks about, in terms of the aged care sector for Australia. I mean, imagine the possibilities for the aged care sector in China. The home care services programs and the enormous expansion that will occur there, the construction and the operation of living units and apartments for retired and older people, the design and planning of aged care, the infrastructure investment that will go on as part of this, and of course the training and education opportunities for that enormous growth in the aged care sector in China. So no That's no doubt why those in the aged care sector, the leadership of the aged care sector in Australia, have welcomed this agreement. Professor John Kelly, the CEO of Aged and Community Services Australia, said the new China-Australia Free Trade Agreement will motivate more organisations involved with the delivery of services to Australia's ageing population to consider the opportunities that come with international trade. We are really excited about this agreement, said Professor Kelly. Or Patrick Reid, the CEO of Leading Aged Care Services Australia. Australia does punch above its weight in care services provision. In terms of export potential, there are already providers operating in other countries, and as a result, Australia is well placed to import or export skills and services to those markets, and went on to say that this would see a surge in that activity. So this is going to mean investment for Australian companies and the returns to Australia. It's going to mean that more workers will have jobs as a result of this agreement. Madam Speaker, this is another example of a can-do government getting on with the job of building a better Australia.
I call the honourable member for Blaxland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. Good things come to those who wait. I refer to the Prime Minister's previous answers about cuts to the ABC. Will the minister now admit that he was wrong?
I call the honourable Minister for Communications.
Well, Madam Speaker, even by the standards of the Shadow Minister, that is a particularly mysterious question. Will the minister admit he's wrong? Wrong about what? Wrong about thinking every day that he might get a question from the Shadow Minister about the NBN? Wrong in thinking that the member for Blaxland had the courage to stand up for his convictions in the House and have an MPI on the NBN or the ABC? Wrong in thinking that the Leader of the Opposition would not be so insensible to popular culture. Come on.
The Minister will assume he said the member for Blaxland on a point of order.
He'd lose the ballot by one vote either. It's wrong about the ABC.
I'm sorry, the member is not entitled to add to his question. He's totally out of order. The minister has the call.
As I was saying, Madam Speaker, was I wrong in thinking that the Leader of the Opposition was not so insensible to popular culture that he'd ask a question about barnacles, when clearly the reason why the ABC's allocation from government is being cut, the reason why we are saving $254 million over 5 years is because of Barnacle Bill's bill. It's Labor's bill. Labor left us with a $48.5 billion deficit. That's the bill. It's Barnacle Bill's $1 billion deficit.
The member for Isaacs on a point of order.
The minister knows that he should address members by their proper titles.
The minister has the call.
That's
the minister has the call.
That's right, Madam Speaker. You've only got to mention a bill and the barrister gets to his feet. It is. I respect that. I respect Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in deference to our former profession, Madam Speaker, we know lawyers have families. You've got to respect that. They struggle, and it's not so easy now, of course, for the honourable member. Anyway, Madam Speaker, this is. Let me be very clear about this. The ABC has been exempt from efficiency dividends since the early mid-90s, nearly 20 years. Were the efficiency dividend that is applying to currently to other government agents be applied to the ABC, it would be 2.5% this year, 2.5% next year, 2.5% the following year, and 1% in the fourth year. That would amount in the ABC to about $250 million. But that is not what was applied to the ABC. Now, in terms of the Department of Finance, they're getting over 5 years roughly the same amount of money, so it is perfectly reasonable to say it is, in substance, in terms of a return to the budget, effectively the same financial consequence as an efficiency dividend. No, it's exactly what I said on Spy. It's exactly what I said on Sky.
There'll be
I
silence
explained
on my
it.
left.
But what the savings to the ABC are, as the Prime Minister said, much better calibrated, much better targeted than an efficiency dividend, because unlike your side, we did the hard work to make the ABC more efficient.
I call the honourable member for Wannon.
My question is to the Minister for Small Business. Will the minister outline to the House how the government will help small businesses in my electorate and elsewhere in Victoria benefit from the signing of the Australia-China Free Trade Agreement?
I call the honourable Minister for Small Business.
There's lots of excitement in the House, Madam Speaker, about this question, and I thank the member for Wannon for asking it. And I can sense the excitement is there because the trade agreement with China has opened up a world of delicious opportunities for businesses right across our country, and particularly in the great state of Victoria. And hasn't the Minister for Trade and Investment done a fantastic job? He's delivered the trade trifecta, and that warms the hearts of all of us in this place, and particularly my fellow man from Albury, the former Minister for Trade and Deputy Prime Minister. What a great achievement, and it's been recognised by ACCI. ACCI have congratulated Minister Robb. They've congratulated the Australian government on delivering this trade agreement between our two countries. The Australian Industry Group rightly has recognised that this agreement provides Australian businesses with more export and more investment opportunities by opening up access to the large Chinese market, while also seeking to ensure that appropriate safeguards have been included for local industry. But it's so important to open those doors, because anyone who's ever been in business knows a simple fact: there is no substitute for customers. And these agreements open the door to so many hundreds of millions of more potential customers that will grow jobs and economic opportunities in our country. But it's not just enough to open the door. We need to make sure that our businesses can take advantage of these outstanding trade agreements. Not just businesses in Victoria, but they will benefit substantially. But businesses right across Australia. Now, the groundwork's been laid. Prime Minister led an outstanding trade delegation with the Minister for Investment, and I was happy to be a part of that, to China with hundreds of Australian businesses. And we learned of the appetite and the desire for Australian goods and services, for big Australian companies, for small Australian businesses. The appetite is there, but we needed to make sure we had the capacity to deliver that potential. And that's what's been done with these agreements. But people aren't left to their own devices. They're not left to their own devices. Support is available to make these opportunities our own. The government's decision to expand the Export Market Development Grant program, another $50 million, Madam Speaker, to support businesses take advantage of these opportunities. In the members' electorate, the Pyrenees Hay Processors Cooperative, it's benefited from the EMDG program. The AME Systems business, another example. We've also seen EFIC focus its work on supporting small businesses, and the private effort of businesses led by David Goodwin as an example, the Australian Made stores, opening hundreds of Australian retail presences in China to deliver that potential. What this government has done is put in place the economic action strategy to build growth, to deliver reward, to make sure opportunity is in reach, but not just opening that door, then providing the tools to make those opportunities real. More jobs, more trade, that's a stronger economy. That's what this government's on about.
I call the honourable member for Watson.
My question's to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, who came up with the strategy of lying about lying, and how do you reckon it's going?
I find that an offensive question. You can rephrase it if you wish.
Madam Speaker, point of order.
I find it offensive.
Well, under what standing order does it
You can have a proper question if you wish, otherwise...
Okay, my question is to the Prime Minister. The government has embarked on a strategy for some months since the budget about lying on whether or not they have broken their election promises. Who came up with this idea, and how do you reckon it's going?
I find the question still offensive and rule it out of order. I call the member for Herbert.
My question is to the Minister for Health. My question is to the Minister for Health.
The Manager of Opposition Business has abused the standing orders right throughout question time today and will resume his seat. The member for Herbert has the call, and the member for Watson will resume his seat.
My question is to the Minister for Health.
Resume his seat. Well, I'm sorry, you've had so many abuses of it today. Sit down or leave the chamber under 94A. Leave under 94A. The member for Herbert has the call.
My question is to the Minister for Health. Will the Minister inform the House...
The member for Herbert will resume his seat. I can hardly resist that tie. The member for McMahon.
Very fine one. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a point of order. Standing Order 100 relates to the rules of questions. There is no provision under Standing Order 100 which indicates that if the Speaker does not like the question, it cannot be asked. There are specific rules. That question did not offend any of the elements in Standing Order 100.
The member will resume his seat. The Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, if it will assist the opposition, if they read Standing Order 100D and any of the Roman numerals, they will find that it offends every one of those. It was full of argument, inferences, imputations, insults, ironical expressions and hypothetical matter, and you ruled it out quite correctly.
The question was totally disorderly. The member for Herbert has the call.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My question is to Queensland's Minister for Health, or Australia's Minister for Health from Queensland. Will the Minister inform the House of the assistance the government has given in providing to help the fight against Ebola? Why is a consistent and deliberate approach to this issue important?
I call the Minister for Health.
Well, Madam Speaker, thank you very much to the member for Herbert for his question. He's a very proud North Queenslander, and he does them very proud in this place as well. The government is obviously, as I think all Australians are, concerned about what's happening in West Africa with people losing their lives to Ebola. We have provided significant support, now $42 million in total, to help people in West Africa and to make sure that we can provide support on the ground. We've contracted with the great Australian company Aspen to provide up to $20 million of funding so that, in concert with the United Kingdom, we can provide a 100-bed facility. But of course, Madam Speaker, this doesn't happen just by chance. There is a lot of work that must go into these sort of contracts, the way in which we can deal with Australian health workers if they contract the virus in West Africa. We have to make sure that we have assurances around evacuation. We need to make sure that we can provide those health workers, given that there is a 50% fatality rate for health workers in West Africa. We need to provide them with the health support that they need if they contract the virus from those whom they are treating. Absolutely essential, and it would be reckless, Madam Speaker, of any government, that sent health workers into harm's way without having properly contemplated how it is you could put this contract and these operations into place. We had a number of meetings of the National Security Committee. We took advice from the Chief of Defence. I met on countless occasions with the Chief Medical Officer. We had advice from the Head of Border Protection and Security. We spoke with all of those people in the United Kingdom and in the United States, our partners abroad, and we came as a government to a reasonable position of which we should all be very proud. But there is a contrast in approach here, Madam Speaker. There is a contrast in approach. And you know, the contrast in approach is best evidenced by the member for Sydney. The member for Sydney was a hopeless health minister. She was a hopeless minister for homelessness, and she demonstrated her incapacity on this issue.
On a point of order.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Is it appropriate for me to thank the Minister for Health for contrasting me with him?
Seat. And yet another abuse of the standing orders. I think the opposition needs a whole session on learning how to use the standing orders. The Minister has the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll tell you what it reminded me of. It reminded me of the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd years. And I'll tell you what, people may have a short memory about the incompetence of the former Labor government. Here comes another success story of the Rudd years. I'll get on to her in a second.
Abused. This had better be a proper standing order point of order.
Madam Speaker, on relevance, how on earth could this be relevant to the question about the government's response to Ebola?
The member will resume her seat. The member will resume. Will leave under 94A. And the member for Charlton will join her. The member for Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I'll wait for her return before we turn to her failings in the Rudd years. But, Madam Speaker, the point that I make here is that it doesn't matter whether you look at the Leader of the Opposition or half of the members on the front bench there. They received their training from Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard, and they cannot be trusted on the cross benches, Madam Speaker. Now, these people on the Treasury benches, these people, when you go one by one, starting with the member for Sydney, displayed complete incompetence in government, and they are displaying it in opposition.
The Minister for Health has completed his time. The Prime Minister has the call. The Prime Minister has the call.
I ask that further questions be placed on the notice.